Here's to thinking local, but nope. Welcome to The Localist, a podcast for local makers and independent entrepreneurs. I'm your host, author of the Localist book and former small business owner, Carrie Rollwagen. So today I wanted to talk about a little bit of an odd topic, which is jealousy, or professional jealousy especially. This is something I don't think we talk about a ton professionally, but I do think it comes up often. Either we're jealous of somebody at work because maybe they get paid more than we do, maybe they get paid more for less work, or maybe we just think they do. Maybe somebody has something like a career that we wish we had, or we're looking on social media and maybe it's like, oh, I want to be an artist or I want to be a writer and this person has all of that together. Or maybe like this person is doing speaking events all the time and they are getting a lot of attention. And I don't think jealousy is what a lot of times what we want to admit to. And it always is, I feel like the advice I often get if I'm feeling jealous of somebody is just kind of like, don't be jealous, like that we shouldn't be comparing ourselves and that kind of thing. But sometimes these feelings just come up anyway. And while I do think there are some things that we should probably be doing to work on them, and I don't think jealousy is something that we want to like encourage, I do think it can also kind of be very helpful in indicating where maybe we need to make a change in our lives. So I don't generally feel very jealous just going through my daily life. And usually if something is kind of sparking that jealousy for me, like, I'm looking at Instagram or I see something else, like see something, another person that I feel like is really succeeding, usually I can be happy for that success. But there are times that I start to feel that jealousy. And to me, that is kind of just a sign that I need to look at something or maybe change something about the way I'm living my life. So it can actually be, I think, a healthy signal that there are things that maybe we need to look at. And so I kind of wanted to talk through today how we do that and what questions I kind of ask myself when I'm kind of feeling that way about something. So one thing that I try to ask myself if I'm feeling this way is, should I be chasing different goals? There have been plenty of times in my life that I'm working so hard at something and eventually I pull back and see like, I have been working hard, but I've been working toward the wrong goal or even just slightly the wrong goal. Like it's so easy to get swept up in what is maybe even working instead of what we want to happen or what our boss wants us to do or what our friends or family want us to do, and to kind of get off course about what we want. And I think sometimes jealousy is a signal that we've gotten off course. So I'll use an example in my own life because I'm not sure I'm explaining this super well. But there have been times that I worked really hard to kind of build this Localist brand and small business brand. And I'm still working hard at that. But I do need to limit how much time I spend on this because ultimately the Localist is really important to me, but there are other things that are important to me too. And so I would see friends of mine who are getting book deals because they're writing fiction or they're writing memoirs or things like that. And I was feeling a little jealousy there, and I realized it's because I love writing, I want to be a writer, and I wasn't dedicating enough time to that. So it didn't mean I gave up the Localist, like here I am, and I'm glad to be here and I love doing the Localist, but I did need to refocus like how much time I was spending on it, what exactly I was doing, and so that I could make more time for writing in my own life. Because it's not that I wasn't happy for those people. It was just that it was reminding me that I wasn't making time for that in my life anymore. So one thing I think jealousy can be really helpful in triggering is really just kind of assessing what we're going after and whether or not we're going after the right thing. And also whether or not that's working. Because sometimes we're going after the same goal, but we've been trying it in the same way over and over and over, and it's not working. I hate when people say the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, because that's not the definition of insanity, but it's still not a wise practice, like if you're doing something over and over, like say if this person is writing a book, and my issue was really that I wasn't making time to write, but say my issue was that I was trying to write a book and I kept like pitching agents in the same exact way and I was getting turned down. Well, maybe that would be a sign that I needed to try something different. Like maybe it's time to try self-publishing. Maybe it's time to try doing short pieces and publishing on a blog and publishing for free, like, so it can be a sign that you're going toward the wrong goal, or it could just be a sign that you need to try a different way to accomplish that goal. So I think that's another thing to ask yourself if you're if you're getting jealous. The next thing I ask myself is, am I getting what I need? And if not, how can I do that? So I think especially if this is a work situation where you're like, this person's getting more attention than I am, or this person I feel like makes more money than I do, or whatever it is. If you think people are, paying more attention to them in meetings or giving them special treatment, a lot of times what I will try to do if I'm having that feeling is to look at baseline, what do I actually need? So if it's pay, how much pay do I need to feel like I'm compensated the way I need to be compensated? If it's attention, what am I looking for in that attention? Do I need validation? Is there a different way to get that? Should I be setting like more one-on-one meetings with my boss so I can get that validation and not be so jealous when someone else gets it in a meeting? If it is attention in meetings, like are there some things that I can do to make sure I'm getting my point across or getting people to listen to what I have to say? So instead of, like, a lot of times when it feels like jealousy from what someone else has, I have found that I don't necessarily need what they have. Like if they're getting a lot of accolades, shout outs and things like that, I don't actually usually even want that. So if I'm feeling jealous of that, it is kind of a sign to me to say, what do I want? Which is usually just validation of my own ideas. And usually if I'm getting that quiet validation, that's worth it to me. I'm not jealous of the shout outs anymore because I am getting what I need. Or the same with compensation. When I got to a point where I felt like I was getting fairly compensated, suddenly that jealousy of other people dissipated because I didn't need to be exactly where they were. But the jealousy to me was just a sign that I needed to kind of reevaluate and fight a little bit more for what I needed. So, like, the first question I would ask myself is, am I chasing the right goal? And the second question I ask is, how can I get what I actually need? Because I don't need what they have, but sometimes the jealousy of what they have reminds me to look at what I need. I feel like I'm talking in circles here, but hopefully I'm making some sense. And the last thing I ask myself is, do I need to grieve something? Because there are things in our lives that, like, it doesn't matter the amount of hustle we put out there toward them. It doesn't matter if we change our goals or if we change the way we're going to our goals or whatever it is. There are certain things that we just can't affect. So sometimes this is in business. A lot of times I think it's in our personal life. Like if you want a relationship, like a romantic relationship or a family relationship, and you don't have one, you can't force yourself, you can't hustle your way into getting that. There are things you could do that might make it more likely, but you can't make it happen. If you want children and you don't have them, if you are missing someone in your life who passed or who is just out of your life, you can't always force that to happen. And the same thing is true in work. Like even things like compensation at work, you can't force your boss to give you a raise. There are things that you could do to maybe make that more likely. You could maybe look for another job, but you can't affect the actual bottom line always. So there are times that jealousy kind of reminds me, not that I have to put something in my life, but that I need to actually take time to admit that this is something I wanted and I can't have. Like there are just some things that the season in our life has passed. I used to own a bookstore and I loved owning a bookstore. And there are some times that I see other people who own stores or own bookstores, especially on social media, and think like, oh, I really miss that. Well, sometimes that jealousy is just a trigger to me to just take some time to like think about it, journal, have a conversation with a friend. It doesn't mean it's a trigger to always go after that thing. It doesn't mean I need to find another bookstore. Sometimes it's just time to actually process what you're feeling. And sometimes that can kind of process through the jealousy as well. And especially with something like a bookstore, sometimes it just means I need to read more books, like talk to people about it, get into that world again, and then be okay with the fact that owning a bookstore is something that was in another season of my life and isn't now. So these are the 3 things that I try to do when I'm feeling jealous, is kind of like use it as a trigger to ask myself, should I be chasing different goals? Is there something else that I need in the bottom line? Or do I just need to grieve something and let it go? Because sometimes it's just lingering because we haven't actually dealt with it. And that's more what we need to do. So again, this was a little bit of a different episode, but I do think that this is something that kind of comes up for a lot of us. And I definitely don't think jealousy, I think it can be useful. I don't think we should encourage it because it's useful. I mean, I think there are more healthy emotions to also show us some of these same things. But when you feel jealous, I don't want you to leave you just feeling guilty or feeling like you shouldn't feel that way, because sometimes it actually is just like pointing out something that you really can change to get to a better point in your life too. The Localist podcast is written and produced by me, Carrie Rollwagen. We record here at Infomedia Studios. So I think the studio does a great job. I love being here, and I think you would too. So if you are wanting to start a podcast, if you want photo or video for your business, or even if you just want to come in and shoot some reels so you have some social media content, we would love to help you with that. So head to infomedia.com and fill out that contact form. We would love to help. Our showrunner is Taylor Davis. Jen Tucker is our outreach manager, and our promotions manager is Elena Harmond. You can find show notes and links to what we talked about on the podcast today at carrierollwagen.com, and you can find me on pretty much any social media at crollwagon. So until next time, here's to thinking local, but nope. Until next time, here's to thinking global by acting local and putting small shops before big box.